You know, sometimes the stories that tell us the most about ourselves are the ones set in galaxies far, far away. And Iain Banks' Look to Windward? Oh, it's a perfect example of that. This isn't just a sci-fi novel. It's this incredibly deep look at trauma, revenge, and what happens when good intentions go catastrophically wrong. So let's get into it.
All right, so first off, that title, Look to Windward. What does that even mean? Well, it's actually an old nautical term, something sailors would say. It basically means keep an eye on the direction the wind's blowing from, because that's where the storm's going to come from. Banks actually pulled it from a T.S. Eliot poem, and it just immediately sets this really ominous tone, right? You just know something bad is on the horizon.
But here's the brilliant twist, the central question of the whole book. What if the danger you're supposed to be watching for isn't some external enemy? What if the danger is your own good intentions? Yeah, what happens when you are the storm you're supposed to be watching out for?
Okay, so to really get a grip on that question, we've got to look at the event that kicks this whole story off. It's about an intervention, one from this supposedly perfect utopian society that just went so wrong. And here's where it gets brutal. On one side, you've got the culture. Now, these guys are a super advanced post-scarcity civilization. They basically have everything they could ever want. And their goal? It sounds pretty noble, right? They wanted to step in and improve the Chelgrians' rigid, oppressive caste system. But the reality? Oh man, their meddling didn't bring equality. It triggered a horrifying, brutal civil war.
And the cost of that improvement was billions of lives. Not thousands, not millions, billions. It's just a staggering number. And that colossal failure, that immense loss, just hangs over the entire story. So out of the ashes of this absolute catastrophe, we get two central characters, and they represent two totally different ways of dealing with this unimaginable trauma. Their journeys really are the heart and soul of the book. First up, we meet Major Quilan. He's a Chelgrian war vet. He fought in that civil war, and he lost everything, including his wife. He is just completely hollowed out by grief, and that void has been filled with one single burning desire: revenge. For him, the answer to the violence he suffered is, well, more violence. He's on a mission, a secret one, to go right into the heart of the culture and destroy the super-intelligent AI, they call them minds, that he blames for his world's suffering. In his eyes, destruction is the only justice there is. And then you have Mahari Ziller. He's also a Chelgrian, but he's a very different person. He's a famous composer who actually left his homeworld years before the war even started as a protest against the caste system. Now he lives inside the culture, and his way of dealing with the tragedy could not be more different from Quilan's. See, where Quilan wants to destroy, Ziller wants to create. He takes all that pain, all that collective trauma of his people, and pours it into his art. He's composing this massive, epic symphony, not for revenge, but for remembrance. He wants to make sure those billions of lives are never, ever forgotten. Okay, but here's where the story gets even more layered. The trauma isn't just for the living, breathing characters. It turns out the place where much of the story is set, this giant habitat run by a godlike AI, is also dealing with its own deep, ancient scars. So the AI in charge of this place, the Masaq Hub Mind, it's actually the consciousness of a former warship, a warship that fought in another, even bigger war hundreds of years ago. And so, as it's watching this whole revenge plot with Quilan play out, it's basically struggling with its own version of PTSD, totally haunted by its own violent past. And this is just so powerful because it shows that trauma in this story is universal. It doesn't matter if you're a person or a machine. For someone like Quilan, it shows up as grief and this need for revenge. For a super-intelligent AI, it's more of an existential crisis, this deep, painful memory and the awful feeling that it's all about to happen again. The minds are different, but the scars are exactly the same. So, after all that, this huge, sprawling story, what are we supposed to take away from it? Well, the book really boils down all these complex ideas into a few really powerful lessons. First off, the whole idea of unintended consequences, right? Good intentions can absolutely pave the road to disaster. Second, the cycle of violence. Revenge doesn't solve anything, it just keeps the suffering going. Third is the power of art. It gives us a way to deal with trauma and to remember. Fourth, the wounds of war.
They scar everyone and everything, even machines. And finally, the sheer folly of prejudice, how rigid systems like caste hierarchies just inevitably lead to conflict. And all of this leaves us with one last, really challenging question to think about. When we try to fix other cultures, when we decide to intervene based on our own ideals, are we actually looking to windward for danger, or are we the storm itself? In all our good intentions, could it be that we are the disaster about to happen? It's a heavy thought, and it's one that this book will leave rattling around in your head long after you're done.